Ethan, did you have fun playing dead for 3 years? Her voice was a venomous whisper. Now it's my turn. For 3 years, I was the stand-in for my patron, Victoria Davenport. The day her old flame came back to the country, I walked away with an 8-figure severance package and vanished in the chaos of a conveniently timed fire. I thought we were even. I spent the next 3 years hosting endless pool parties at a beachfront villa in Miami. A different model on each arm, living a life of pure debauchery. I assumed she'd long since married her golden boy and forgotten all about her disposable substitute. But 3 years later, the hedonism grew stale. I booked a flight back to New York. The moment the plane touched down, a fleet of black Bentleys boxed in the exit. The woman I thought had forgotten me stepped out of the lead car, her eyes bloodshot, a twisted, possessive smile playing on her lips. The night air was cool. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, the lights of Manhattan glittered like a fallen constellation. Victoria, wearing the ice-ebb blue silk slip I always loved, leaned against my legs, her breath a warm wisp of air. "Ethan," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Caleb gets back the day after tomorrow." Her words, though calm, were a scalpel precisely slicing through the tender illusion we had maintained for 3 years. I knew my contract was up. The off-boarding process had begun. I felt nothing. Stroking her long, smooth hair, I smiled. My voice was pitched to the familiar, gentle tone we always use with each other. "Great. We should go welcome him back together." My mind was already racing. The 8-figure sum in my bank account shimmered in my thoughts. Should I go see the northern lights in Iceland, ski the Alps in Switzerland, or just run a mansion in South Beach and drink myself into oblivion? I hadn't decided yet, but any option was better than staying here. A living counterfeit. The cardinal rule of the professional stand-in. Never catch feelings. Take the money, disappear without a trace. For 3 years, I played the part of her devoted boyfriend. My arm around her at every gala, shielding her from a world of sharks and sycophants. I was good at my job, so good, I almost started to believe myself. But the balance on my banking app was a constant cold reminder. This was a transaction. I sold my time and my performance. She bought emotional stability and companionship. Now the transaction was complete. The welcome back dinner was a who of New York's elite. Victoria had changed into a custom-made white gown, resuming her role as Manhattan's reigning ice queen. A crowd orbited her, this untouchable snow lotus, and the man, Caleb Vance, stood beside her like he owned the place, the picture of effortless charm. They looked good together. The handsome heir and the beautiful Aries. A perfect match from the same elite world. Not like me. A weed who'd clawed his way out of the foster system. I leaned against a column in the corner, nursing a glass of champagne. A complete outsider. Watching them felt like watching a movie that had nothing to do with me. Eventually, Caleb found an opening and made his way toward me. Champagne flute in hand. He wore a victor's smirk, his eyes dripping with superiority and contempt. "The knockoff," he said, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "Have fun these past 3 years." He leaned in closer. "Tommy got out of my picture. I'd suggest you change your name and keep a low profile or I'll destroy you." The smugness was practically oozing from him. I could tell he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head, fantasizing about how I'd crumble, how I'd lash out in jealous rage. Too bad for him. I had anticipated 100 different provocations and prepared 100 different retorts. In the end, I chose the one that would infuriate him the most. Indifference. I didn't just fail to get angry. I acted like he told a harmless joke. I gave him an elegant toast, my smile wider and more genuine than his. "My deepest thanks, Mr. Vance. It's been a very generous 3 years." I winked. The trial period was more than satisfactory. "It's been a pleasure doing business with you. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness." His perfectly crafted punch landed on a pillow. The sophisticated mask he wore cracked instantly. Shock, confusion, then pure unadulterated rage. He couldn't comprehend how a replacement like me could be so calm. Watching the series of emotions play across his face, I felt like every little indignity I had suffered over the last 3 years had just been paid back with interest. I wasn't here to fight over a woman. I was here to finalize my exit interview and watch the clown show. Just as Caleb was sputtering, speechless with fury, a plume of thick smoke billowed from a corner of the ballroom. The piercing shriek of the fire alarm cut through the air. The practiced elegance of the crowd vanished, replaced by primal panic. Screams and cries erupted as guests scattered like headless chickens. I watched the chaos unfold, and my first thought wasn't to escape. It was a gift from the gods. My perfect exit strategy. In the pandemonium, I caught a glimpse of Caleb. A heavy decorative trellis knocked over in the stampede had crashed down on his leg. He collapsed, screaming in agony as flames began to lick at the tablecloths around him. Not far away, Victoria was being held back by her security, shrieking his name like a mad woman. Caleb! Caleb! Her voice was raw with desperation. I took a deep breath, not for love, but for the perfect final act of my career as a stand-in. I fought against the current of fleeing bodies plunging into the smoke. The heat was searing as I grabbed the semi-conscious Caleb and dragged him out like a sack of potatoes. I dumped him near the closest emergency exit, yelled, "Get him out of here," to the first responders. And then, without a single glance back at Victoria, I slipped out an unnoticed service door and vanished into the New York night. Victoria, I thought, this is my final gift to you. We're even. We're done. A week later, South Beach, Miami. I was stretched out on a lounge chair of my private beachfront villa. The long string of zeros on my banking app made every breath of salty air taste like freedom. My first call was to a party planning company. I want to throw a party. What's your budget? I grinned into the phone. No budget. I wanted to go so big, so loud that all of South Beach can hear my music, making problems disappear with money. Simple and effective. My life officially switched to paradise mode. I'd wake up in a plush king-sized bed with a view of the sunrise over the ocean. I'd spend my mornings cruising down the coastal highway in a rented Ferrari, the sea breeze billowing through my linen shirt. At noon, I'd be under a massive umbrella while a leggy model in a string bikini he fed me chilled peeled grapes, asking if they were sweet. "You're sweeter," I'd tell her, and she'd giggle, resting her head on my shoulder. On my other side, a popular streamer would be giving me a shoulder rub, cooing, "Ethan, you really know how to live." The pool was filled with beautiful women. I'd flown in from all over the country. Their laughter like silver bells. I put on my sunglasses, chug an ice-cold beer, and gaze out at the azure ocean, the golden sand, and the swaying palm trees. This was living. Everything about New York felt distant, unreal, the icy, the phony old flame. It was all from another lifetime. No amount of love triangle drama or high society could compare to the simple solid reality of a beautiful view and a beautiful woman. Occasionally a push notification from the Wall Street Journal would pop up on my phone. Davenport's turns iron fist on board. Shocks Wall Street with ruthless tactics. I just chuckle and toss the phone aside. Turn off all notifications. Then I dive into the cool water of the pool. The cheers of beautiful women ringing in my ears and enjoy my sun-drenched existence. I was dead after all. And what was a dead man doing in a Miami swimming pool? Victoria's triumphs and tragedies had nothing to do with me anymore. In a way, I was grateful for that fire. It had incinerated my past and given me a new life of absolute freedom. In Miami, I was just a lucky guy who'd hit the jackpot. Nobody knew who Ethan Hayes was. Time flowed like the Miami sun, hot and fast. 3 years flew by in a blur. But even the most exciting life can get old. When another gorgeous influencer sidled up to me and purred, "Hey, handsome, care to explore the meaning of life with me tonight?" For the first time, I felt a profound bone-deep boredom. I'd applied so much sunscreen to bikini-clad bodies, my hands cramped. I'd thrown so many pool parties, I'd become numb to beauty. I discovered that even extreme pleasure leads to apathy. The numbers in my bank account kept growing, but my happiness had plateaued. I found myself missing the crisp autumn air of New York. 3 years is long enough for anyone to forget a relationship, to forget a person. I naturally assumed Victoria had long since settled down with her precious Caleb. Even Caleb with a bad leg was still the one that got away. Me, the stand-in who had been reduced to ash. I should have been completely erased from her memory. So, on another listless afternoon, I casually booked a flight back to New York under my real name, Ethan Hayes. What's the harm in going back for a visit? I thought, just a trip down memory lane. The plane landed. The second my feet touched the pavement in New York, the familiar smell of the city hit me with a wave of disorientation. 3 years, and it seemed like nothing had changed. I was pulling my single carry-on, enjoying the long ST urban energy, when I stepped out of the VIP terminal. I hadn't even pulled out my phone to call an Uber. Suddenly, dark figures materialized from both sides, surrounding me in a flash. They were dressed in sharp suits, their faces impassive. Professional security. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a welcome party. This was an abduction. My reaction was fast. I instinctively tensed, ready to fight and run. 3 years of surfing, diving, and working out in Miami had made me stronger than ever. But these guys were clearly highly trained, and there were too many of them. The moment I moved, two men seized my arms in an iron grip. Before I could make another move, a cloth reeking of chloroform was pressed hard against my nose and mouth from behind. Struggling was useless. As my consciousness faded, the last thing I saw was a pair of impossibly familiar high heels stopping right in front of me. They were a limited edition pair I'd given Victoria for her birthday. She'd love them. When I woke up, it was to the feeling of a ridiculously soft mattress. But the cold touch and metallic click in my wrist shocked me fully awake. A gleaming silver chain bound my wrist to the ornate brass headboard. I tried to move. The chain rattled. A crisp reminder of my situation. I scanned the room. The opulent familiar bedroom. Every piece of furniture, every decorative touch made my skin crawl. This was the master bedroom of the penthouse I had shared with Victoria for 3 years. Nothing had changed. Even the book I'd left half read on the nightstand was still there in the exact same spot. The door creaked open. Victoria walked in. She was so much thinner than I remembered. Her face was a pale, bloodless porcelain mask, her chin sharp enough to cut glass. But her eyes, once as cool and distant as the moon, now burned with a feverish, almost pathological intensity one had never seen before. It was a possessiveness that seemed to sink into the bone. The look of a starving wolf cornering its prey in the dead of night. She walked to the bed step by step. Her heels were silent on the expensive Persian rug, but each footfall felt like it was landing on my heart. She leaned over me, her cold fingers trembling slightly as they traced the lines of my face, my eyebrows, my eyes, as if verifying a priceless treasure she thought was lost forever. Ethan. Her voice was painfully, thick with 3 years of repressed sobs and simmering madness. I finally found you. I forced myself to stay calm, to push down the shock and terror rising in my throat. I spoke in the steadiest voice I could manage. Victoria, what the hell is this? This is kidnapping. It's a felony. She laughed. It was a harrowing, wild sound filled with endless grievance and resentment. A felony? She scoffed. To find you. I turned this entire city upside down. Everyone said I was crazy. I put a 7-figure bounty on any information called in every favor I had. I haven't slept more than 3 hours a night, all just to find a single piece of proof that you were still alive. And you? She whipped out her phone, the screen flaring to life. A video started playing. It was me, shirtless, laughing by the pool in Miami with a girl in a bikini. I was picking her up, tossing her into the water, then diving in after her with a wide grin. The sun was bright. Our smiles were bright. In the background, music blared and dozens of young, beautiful people cheered. Then the screen began to flash through a series of photos. Me on a yacht drinking with models. Me in a sports car taking a selfie with an influencer on my lap. Me on the beach rubbing sunscreen on a beautiful woman's back. In every single photo, I looked deliriously happy. You were living it up in Miami, she hissed. With all those women. She lunged closer, her hot breath a mix of perfume and mania against my ear. She enunciated every word like a death sentence. I looked for you for 1,095 days. Every single one was a day spent in hell and you were out there having the time of your life. Ethan, this time I don't care if it's a felony. I will never ever let you leave me again. The cold chain rattled with her movements. I tried to pull away, but the custom-made links didn't give an inch, only tightening and leaving a red mark on my wrist. This had clearly been prepared well in advance. Victoria just sat on the edge of the bed, not speaking, just staring at me with that obsessive, dangerous gaze, tracing every contour of my face as if she wanted to devour me whole. The suffocating silence was more terrifying than any scream. I decided to break it myself. I pushed down my fear and demanded coldly, "What do you want from me? Let me go. Where's Caleb? Shouldn't you be taking care of your one true love instead of kidnapping your stand-in?" I said his name on purpose, trying to provoke her to make her lose control. At the mention of Caleb, a venomous hatred flared in her eyes, so intense it was almost tangible. She let out a cold, contemptuous laugh. Him, a 2-bit con artist. A piece of trash who should have been sent to hell a long time ago. She picked up a remote and turned on a massive projector screen opposite the bed. It lit up to show a man slouched in a wheelchair. His eyes were hollow, his face haggard and unshaven, his body draped in a faded hospital gown. It was Caleb Vance, once so polished and confident. Now he looked like a broken homeless man, stripped of every last shred of his former glory. 3 years ago, everyone told me you died in that fire, Victoria said, her tone deceptively casual, as if she were discussing a trivial news story. But her eyes were locked on me, watching for the slightest flicker of a reaction. They only found a charred cuff link at the scene. They said the metal matched yours. I didn't believe them. Later, she paused, and every word that followed was an icicle stabbing into my heart. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. I had his legs broken. I just kept thinking, why couldn't it have been him? Why did it have to be you? My pupils contracted. A bone-deep chill shot up from my feet to the crown of my head. I had risked my life to save him. And she, because she thought I was dead, had personally ordered him crippled. This woman, she was truly insane. Looking at the pathetic wreck Caleb had become on the screen, I felt a genuine primal fear of Victoria for the first time. She seemed pleased by my shock, a 6-mile playing on her lips as she continued to unload the secrets of the last 3 years. Did you know he wasn't some devoted childhood sweetheart? He was already married with a wife and kids back in Europe. He only came back for the Davenport money, trying to play both sides, treating me like an idiot. He could just conquer. She grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at her. Her eyes were bloodshot, swimming with betrayal and pain. And you, my Ethan, you ran into that fire to save him. Did you think he was more important than you, too? Did you think I was supposed to choose him, not you? Tell me, did you? Her nails dug into my jaw. The pain was sharp, grounding, stunned by her crazed interrogation and the image of a crippled Caleb Vance. I felt a tremor of fear that started in my soul. I realized I was no longer dealing with a proud aloof AAEs of New York. I was facing a beast driven mad by obsession and betrayal. And I was her prey, the one thing she had decided she could never ever lose. My silence to her was an admission of guilt. I chose silence because any explanation would have been pointless. And my silence was, of course, misinterpreted by Victoria as confirmation. The madness in her eyes began to recede, replaced by a heart-wrenching pain. She let go of my chin and laughed at herself, a sound filled with endless sorrow. So, you really did think that, too? This state of utter dejection seemed to calm her. She sat on the edge of the bed, her back to me, and began to haltingly recount the events of the past 3 years. She said that after the fire, she had searched for me like a woman possessed, but the only thing found at the scene was that single burnt cufflink. Everyone told her I was dead, but she refused to believe it. She used every resource the Davenport family had, casting a nationwide net like a paranoid fanatic. She investigated every Ethan Hayes she could find, checked every unidentified body. She even hired private investigators to dig into my past, visiting the group home where I grew up, my old university, trying to find any clue, any thread. They all said I was losing my mind. My parents wanted to send me to a psychiatrist. The board said I was being irrational. They tried to sideline me, but I didn't care. It was during this obsessive search that she had stumbled upon the truth about Caleb's life overseas. She discovered not only that he was married, but that his wife was the daughter of his business partner. He had come back to the States purely to secure an investment from her family to bail out his own failing company. He told me he had loved me for 10 years. It was all a lie. He saw me as a fool. An ATM. The rage of being deceived, woven together with the agony of losing me, had caused her to snap completely. On a stormy rain last night, she had her men corner Caleb as he was trying to flee the country at the airport. I wanted him to know what it feels like to lose the thing you value most, she said, turning to look at me, her eyes holding a disturbing mix of childlike innocence and adult cruelty. So, I took his legs, my throat was dry. I finally found my voice asking hoarsely, "Then why are you doing this to me?" I was just a substitute paid to do a job. My question seemed to stun her. Then a bitter smile more painful than tears spread across her face. A substitute? Ethan, when did I ever treat you like a substitute? She looked at me, her eyes filled with a universe of regret, asking you to come to that dinner. That was a test. A stupid, arrogant test. I thought you'd be jealous. I thought you'd get angry that you'd storm over and tell me you didn't give a damn about Caleb, that you only wanted me. My ridiculous pride, wouldn't let me be the first to say it. I thought we had an understanding. I thought you knew. Her voice trembled and tears finally spilled over, trailing down her pale cheeks. I never imagined you would choose such a final way to leave me. I just wanted you to be jealous for me just once. And instead, you chose to die. So that was it. Her monumental pride had prevented her from showing vulnerability. She'd engineered a misguided test of love and in doing so had lit the fuse on a disaster that consumed everyone. My death was the final straw that broke her. Looking at her ashen face and the tears rolling down her cheeks, I felt a complex storm of emotions. Mixed in with the fear was a strange, unsettling flicker of shock and sympathy. I'd always believed she didn't love me. From that day on, Victoria stopped her hysterical outbursts, but the chain on my wrist remained. She began to care for me with a meticulous, smothering attention. She cooked all my meals herself, every dish, something I had once mentioned. I liked the spice level of the jambalaya, the sweet-toy ratio of the barbecue sauce, even the precise temperature of the water I drank. She remembered everything. She would sit by the bed for hours reading aloud from one of my arcane quantitative finance textbooks from college. Theories so dense I'd nearly forgotten to myself. She read with intense concentration. When she finished a chapter, she would look at me with something akin to worship and whisper, "I knew you were the brilliant one, my love. You're the one who can help me run Davenport Industries. You're my guardian angel." She started calling me my love, darling, as if we were a long married couple. The terms made my skin crawl, but I was in no position to object. My only form of resistance was a hunger strike. I thought it might provoke her, push her back into that wild rage, but it didn't. She just brought in a bowl of carefully prepared soup and sat stubbornly by the bed. I kept my eyes shut, ignoring her. She sat there in silence from morning until night. When the food got cold, she would take it to be reheated and returned her vigil. When I was finally so hungry that my stomach was cramping and my head was spinning, she brought the warm soup to my lips, spoon by spoonful, her eyes gentle but unyielding. "Please eat something." "Just a little," she pleaded, her voice soft. "If you don't eat, I won't eat either." Eventually, I gave in. I opened my mouth. This sweet, suffocating pressure was disarming me. A few days later, she unlocked the chain on my wrist. My heart leaped. I thought she'd finally come to her senses. Instead, she produced another longer chain and fastened it to my ankle. The length was precisely calculated to allow me freedom of movement within the bedroom, the en-suite bathroom, and a small attached balcony. But escape was impossible. At night, she would cling to me as she slept, a cat starved for security, constantly murmuring my name. "Ethan, don't go. Don't ever leave me again." She would tell me how she survived the last 3 years by living off our memories. How she had printed our photos and covered her entire private study with them. How she wore the nightgowns I brought her to bed every night just to inhale the lingering scent of me. Her words were an invisible net wrapping tighter and tighter around me. She brought in a giant tablet and took me on a virtual tour of my old university campus. Using the street view, she pointed to a tree-lined path. "I went there after you. After I walked every single path you must have walked. I tried to imagine what you were like back then. Probably just like now. Scowling and impatient." I watched her performance in silence. My mind coldly calculating the odds of escape, but the security in this penthouse was military grade. Every window was fitted with invisible infrared alarms. All my electronic devices were gone. This place was a fortress. One day at dinner, I deliberately knocked a bowl of scalding soup over, hoping to anger her to find a crack in her calm facade. The hot liquid splashed all over her hand, turning the skin bright red. She barely flinched, just let out a small hiss of pain. Without a word, she knelt to clean up the mess. Then she looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice so low it was almost buried in the floor. "As long as you don't think about leaving again, you can do whatever you want. You can hit me, you can scream at me, anything." Her submission and her obsession created a bizarre cocktail, a gentle prison that made my chest tighten until I couldn't breathe. I realized I truly had no way out. One morning, Victoria dressed me in a new set of casual clothes. Her voice tinged with a rare, bright excitement. "It's a beautiful day. I'm taking you out. There are some people I want you to meet." A flicker of hope ignited in me. An opportunity to escape. But that hope was extinguished when I saw the 8-man security detail waiting by the door. This wasn't freedom. It was just a change of scenery for my imprisonment. The car didn't go anywhere I recognized. It pulled up in front of an ordinary, slightly run-down apartment building in Queens. Flanked by guards, she led me by the hand to a door and rang the bell. It opened to reveal a middle-aged couple, their hair gray, their faces etched with years of hardship. The moment they saw me, they began to tremble, tears streaming down their faces. Before I could process what was happening, they rushed forward and threw their arms around me, crying out, "Our son. Oh, our boy, we finally found you." I stood frozen, my mind a complete blank. "Who are these strangers?" Victoria whispered in my ear, her voice impossibly gentle. "They're your birth parents. They had to give you up when you were born. It wasn't their choice. I spent 2 years pulled a lot of strings to find them for you." I was engulfed in the tearful embrace of these strangers who held my hands and told me their story of poverty and regret, of how they had searched for me for years, living with a lifetime of guilt. The sudden onslaught of family was dizzying. But what threw me even more off balance was how they held Victoria's hand, calling her a saint. Their voices choked with gratitude. "Victoria, thank you. Thank you." If it wasn't for you, we never would have seen our Ethan again in this lifetime. Ethan, you have to treat her right. You can't ever let a girl like this down." This two-pronged moral assault was suffocating. What could I say? Your sainted daughter-in-law is a psychopath who kidnapped your son. They would never believe me. After leaving my parents' apartment, the car headed out of the city. When I saw the familiar weathered gate of the group home I grew up in, my heart seized, but it wasn't the place I remembered. The old building had been replaced by a bright, clean 3-story facility. The yard had a new rubberized track and playground equipment, and the plaque by the entrance read elegant script donated by Ms. Victoria Davenport. Many of the women who had cared for me as a child were still there. They rushed over, a mix of shock and joy on their faces. "Ethan, you're alive." "Oh, thank God." They chatted on, praising Victoria's kindness and generosity, telling me how she visited every year with donations and gifts for the children, and how she always paid her respects at the grave of the home's late director, the woman who had raised me, led by the staff. I found myself standing before a tombstone. It was immaculate, with a fresh bouquet of chrysanthemums placed at its base, the petals still glistening with morning dew. I knew without a doubt that Victoria had been here this morning. In the entire world besides me, she was the only one who remembered the old woman who had taken me in as an infant. After she passed, I thought I was the only one left to mourn her. In that moment, for the first time, my heart was truly deeply shaken. On the ride back, I broke the silence. It was the first time I had initiated a conversation with her. My voice was rough. "Thank you." I felt Victoria's body go rigid beside me. After the visit to the group home, something inside me shifted. I was no longer cold and resistant, no longer consumed with thoughts of escape. I started to respond to her. The chain was still on my ankle, but the atmosphere between us was no longer that of a captor and her prisoner. That evening at dinner, I put a piece of fish on her plate, her favorite. "You're too thin," I said quietly. "Eat more." Her chopsticks clattered against her plate. She looked up and her eyes were so bright they seemed to catch fire, like someone who had wandered in darkness for an eternity and had just seen the sun. She carefully ate the piece of fish, chewing it slowly as if to savor the moment, her eyes welling up. When she was in her study, poring over company documents with a deep frown, I would come up behind her and gently massage her shoulders. She would let out a soft sigh and lean her entire weight back against me, a contented cat being petted. "It's so good to have you here, my love," she'd murmur. For the first time, the penthouse felt warm, peaceful. That night, when she wrapped her arms around me from behind, as she always did, I didn't lie there like a corpse. I turned over and pulled her into my arms. I felt her body go stiff with shock, followed by the frantic, fluttering beat of her heart against my chest. "Go to sleep," I whispered in her ear, held in my arms. She slept through the night without stirring. It was the most peaceful sleep she had had in 3 years. My cooperation sent her into a state of euphoria. Her entire being seemed to light up. She stopped watching me with that constant scrutinizing gaze. The madness in her eyes was replaced by a deep trusting love. And then one morning, I woke up to find that the chain, that symbol of my imprisonment, was gone. All that remained on my ankle was a faint red line. I was free, but this time I didn't think about running. We started to live like a real couple. We tended the rooftop garden together. We curled up on a sofa and watched old movies. When she cried at the sad parts, I'd hold her and clumsily try to comfort her. "Stop crying. You're messing up your makeup." She'd wipe her tears and nose on my shirt and look up at me accusingly. "It's your fault for picking such a terrible movie." Her pathology seemed to be soothed by my compliance, revealing the playful, vulnerable girl her age that had been buried underneath. She was coquettish, needy, and a single compliment from me could make her happy for an entire day. I realized with a jolt that I was actually falling in love with her. I admitted it to myself. I was won over. Perhaps from the very beginning, my feelings for her weren't entirely transactional. It was just that my cynical self-preservationist principles wouldn't let me acknowledge it. I was afraid of genuine connection, terrified of getting hurt. So, I hid behind a wall of money and contracts. Now, I decided to listen to my heart to try and accept this wild, scorching love. I began to take an active role in her company's affairs, using my knowledge to help her strategize. The look of admiration and love in her eyes when she watched me work gave me a sense of fulfillment I'd never known. It was more satisfying than all the models in Miami combined. After months of my good behavior, Victoria finally let her guard down completely. She excitedly suggested we go shopping to buy me a new wardrobe for the season. It was the first time since my abduction that I was allowed out in public without a security detail. We walked hand in hand through Bergdorf Goodman, just another New York couple. Victoria's face was glowing with a happiness I'd never seen before. She patiently picked out suits, shoes, and watches for me, swiping her card without a second glance. My husband has to have the best of everything, she'd say. This one, and that one, too. Wrap them all up. The envious looks from the sales associates made me a little uncomfortable, but deep down it felt good. Just as Victoria was linking her arm through mine, happily debating where to go for a camel dinner, a chirpy, surprised voice called out from behind us. Ethan, oh my God, it's really you. I thought you'd totally forgotten about me after you went back to New York. I turned and my blood ran cold. The speaker was a stylish, beautiful young woman, one of the many who had graced my Miami pool parties. I couldn't even remember her name. She had noticed Victoria. She bounced over, instinctively, reaching out to grab my other arm. I flinched back. Her hand fell in empty air, but she didn't seem to care. You're terrible. She pouted, getting closer. You said you'd call when you got back, but then your number was disconnected. You just ghosted everyone. Remember only you said you were going to teach me how to free dive. I've been waiting. Her words died in her throat. She had finally seen the woman standing next to me, whose expression had gone from sunny to arctic in a split second. The temperature in the store dropped 20 degrees. Victoria's hand on my arm tightened like a vice, her nails digging into my flesh. I could feel her body trembling. All the happiness and warmth had vanished from her face, replaced by a glacial fury, the oppressive calm before a hurricane. She stared daggers at the embarrassed socialite, then turned her head slowly to look at me. Who is she? She asked. Each word a shard of ice. I teach her to dive. The sweet atmosphere we've been enjoying shattered. The air itself felt thick, solid. The poor girl was white as a sheet under Victoria's murderous gaze, stammering, No, Miss Davenport, you've got all wrong. We were just. Victoria ignored her completely. She grabbed my wrist and dragged me toward the exit. Her strides long and furious. Her strength was astonishing. I was practically pulled through the store, leaving behind a trail of stunned shoppers and a mortified girl who looked like she was about to burst into tears. I knew it was over. The brief period of peace had come to an end. The monster I had managed to soothe was back. I sat on the bed, my heart a block of ice. Minutes later, the door was thrown open. Victoria stormed in, her eyes blazing red. A lioness provoked beyond reason. She grabbed the shopping bags and began smashing everything, the expensive suits, the new watches against the floor, the walls. A fortune in luxury goods treated like garbage. She pointed a trembling finger at me, her voice a raw scream. 3 years. How many women like her were there during her 3 years in Miami? 110, 100. I tried to explain, my face pale. It was nothing. We were just having fun. Nothing happened between us. Before I could finish, she shoved me with all her might, sending me sprawling back onto the plush bed, having fun. She was on top of me in an instant, her hot tears and punishing kisses raining down on my face and neck. Her kiss was no longer tender. It was a furious, desperate, possessive thing full of jealousy and rage meant to bite and conquer. You're not allowed to have fun, she sobbed, her voice broken and tyrannical. Your past, your present, your future, every inch of you, every single hair on your head belongs to me. To me alone, I was going crazy looking for you. And you were out there playing with other women. Ethan, how could you do this to me? This imprisonment wasn't cold. It was a firestorm of emotion hot enough to melt steel. I didn't fight back. I knew explanations were futile. She didn't need an explanation. She needed confirmation. Confirmation that I belonged only to her. And so I gave it to her with my actions. Again and again, I showed her that my past was over and that my present and my future were hers alone. For days that blurred together, I was her prisoner on that bed. She used every method imaginable to exorcise 3 years of insecurity and a fresh violent jealousy that had been ignited. From frenzy to exhaustion and back to frenzy. When I was finally released, my body aching, feeling completely drained. The demonic Victoria was gone. She was curled up in my arms like an exhausted kitten. Her voice thick with tears and the satisfied calm after a storm. My love, you can't look at other women anymore. Not even a glance. Promise me. Okay. Her voice was small, pleading, please promise me. I stroked her damp hair, feeling her complete, unguarded dependence on me. In the crucible of that confrontation, the last barrier around my heart had dissolved completely. I leaned down and placed a solemn kiss on her forehead. With all the tenderness and conviction I possessed, I answered her, okay. In that moment, I willingly and completely accepted this insane, all-consuming love, and I decided I would spend my life protecting it. I held her closer and whispered, "Victoria, let's get married." She went still in my arms, and then she began to cry, a deep, shuddering sob of pure, unadulterated joy. Not long after, we had a wedding that was the talk of New York. At the reception, I was formally introduced as the new CEO of Davenport Industries, stepping in to help run the empire for my wife. We had just learned was pregnant. I went from a carefree playboy to the man everyone called Mr. Hayes, the decisive, ruthless new leader of a corporate dynasty. My days were filled with endless meetings and mountains of paperwork. But I was happy to do it because I knew that no matter how late I worked, there would always be a light on for me at home and someone waiting. One afternoon, I was chairing an important transatlantic video conference, negotiating a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense. The executives on the other side of the screen were all stone-faced. Suddenly, the boardroom door opened. Victoria, now visibly pregnant in a loose-fitting dress, walked straight up to me. She placed a folded piece of paper in front of me. I picked it up, confused, and signaled for a 10-minute recess. When I saw the contents of a lab report, I froze. HCG positive. Victoria leaned into my ear and into the still live microphone, announced in a voice filled with blissful pride, "Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. You're going to be a father." On the screen, the international executives exchanged bewildered glances. Then, one by one, they broke in knowing smiles and scrambled to find excuses to sign off. "Oh, congratulations, Mr. Hayes. That's wonderful news. I just remembered a very urgent email I have to attend to. Yes. My wife also asked me to be home early. We'll reconnect on this tomorrow. Congrats again." Within seconds, the screen was empty. They had left the room to us. I killed a video feed and pulled Victoria into my arms. Too overwhelmed with emotion to speak, I buried my face in her neck, absorbing the profound, earth-shattering joy of this new life. My own life, once a piece of driftwood, now had an anchor, a wife, a family, a career, and a child on the way. After Victoria's pregnancy was confirmed, I worked even harder, driven by the desire to build the best possible future for them. One afternoon, after plowing through a stack of urgent files, I felt a wave of exhaustion hit me. I went into the private lounge attached to my office for a quick nap. As I was drifting in a hazy sleep, I felt a weight settle on my chest. A familiar, delicate fragrance filled the air along with a soft, ticklish sensation. I opened my eyes to see Victoria, her baby bump prominent, carefully draped over me like a cat. She was nuzzling her soft cheek against my neck. I jolted, reaching up to help her. "What are you doing here? Get up. You'll crush the baby." She refused to move, holding on tighter, her voice laced with playful mischief, wondering how I got in. She pulled a black key card from her pocket and dangled it in front of my face. "I have master access to every door in your office." She sniffed disdainfully. "I was worried that my new bombshell assistant, the one with a chest bigger than mine, might try to seduce you while you were sleeping." Her tone was filled with a tiny, adorable hint of jealousy. I chuckled and gently booped her on the nose. "Don't be ridiculous," I said, helping to support her waist. "Besides, this is your office building. It's perfectly normal for you to have a key." I sighed, a mix of amusement and helplessness. "I'm just surprised to find you on top of me like this. Aren't you worried about our little one?" Victoria snuggled contentedly into my chest, her logic flawless. "I asked the doctor, this position is perfectly safe, and I missed you. Besides, the baby is always quietest when I'm holding you." She leaned down and gave me a soft, lingering kiss. "You're my personal teddy bear," she declared. "And nobody else gets to have you." I smiled, a happy, defeated man. I shifted my position to make her more comfortable, then wrapped my arms tightly around her, holding both her and our unborn child close. The end.